I do that a lot in my classes. I ask my students to hold hands or just look at each other. We just stand in a circle and look at each other, and it freaks them out because it's not something you would naturally do. But I thought if you stopped every day, looked someone in the eye and held their hands, what a connection we would have. And that's acting, being connected to ourselves, being connected to everything around us, every object, everything, every person. As Sanford Meisner says, there's no such thing as nothing. So there's always something.
So that's the nature of the business, dealing with rejection. Now, I'm sure you hear it. It gets to you sometimes. So did you ever feel like giving up?
Wow. No.
Never did.
No, and I'm actually just beginning. I can't wait to go back out. I'm getting headshots in the springtime. I did 5 films this past year.
Yay.
And did not audition for one of them, and it wasn't even something, I was so busy teaching and raising my son that acting was kind of not in the mix. And I was back on stage last year just for a scene, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is amazing. This feels good. And yeah, no, I never give up, ever, ever, ever. My plan is to get to Broadway. I just did a voiceover for an off-Broadway show, so it was kind of cool hearing my voice. So I'm hoping that actually happens, and that's a project that's in the works. And no, I will always be a SAG-AFTRA actor and equity eligible, and one day I hope to get my equity card.
Nice.
But if I'm going to do it, I want it to be in an off-Broadway or a Broadway show. No, it's part of me. There is nothing else I can ever do.
And it's acknowledging that some people do push it away, like
Yeah.
And I've noticed in my life when I've pushed it away or I've buried it, my life isn't going well. Stuff is not falling into place. Like, what's wrong with me? And the minute I turn to the art,
I'll say to people say to me, "Oh, I used to be an actor." I'm like, "What? Huh?" Or I used to be a musician. What? That makes no sense to me. I don't understand that. I used to be a writer. What? I don't believe it's a choice. It's not like I used to be a waiter. I used to work at Baskin Robbins. Yeah. I've done all those things. I was a preschool teacher and things, but no, an actor sits inside your skin. It's part of you. A musician, to me, you learn an instrument. How do you ever put it down? It just doesn't make sense to me.
So you're an actor making your way through the biz, but then what made you decide to transition to teaching?
It was interesting. I actually had gone on a retreat to Florida and ended up, just like where you did a lot of journaling and writing, and teaching kept coming up, which I thought was interesting. And everyone in the group kept saying it. And when I got back, I had said to my voice teacher what had happened. And he said, it's so interesting because I feel the same way. I think you're a natural born teacher. And, we laughed about it. We joked about it a little bit. And then that night, my acting teacher called me, and it was late at night. And I thought that was weird. I said, what did I do? And he said, listen, my first year students, my new classes are coming in with these amazing activities. And I'm like, oh, that's great. And he goes, no, it's not great because you wrote them for them. And I went, uh-oh. And he said, are my students calling you? And I said, yes. And he's like, and you're helping them? I said, I kind of can't help myself. He's like, well, stop doing that. And I was like, oh, uh-oh. And I went into class the next day. I said, are you mad at me? He said, you know what? I'm not mad at you, but I think you should assist me because, they're coming in and I know it's not them. And it has like your flair all over it. And he said, why don't you come in and assist? So that's when I started to do that. And when I got there, he said to me, it's so weird because this little bird keeps whispering in my ear that you need to teach. And we kind of talked about it and then let it go. And like I said, I assisted in class and my voice teacher kept bringing it up. And then he had asked me if I wanted to open a studio with him. He'd called me a while later. And it almost happened, but I told him I wanted to teach children. And he thought I was crazy. And I said, no, I think Meisner can be rearranged and kind of downsized to teach children. And he didn't want to do that. He didn't want to have anything to do with it. So it kind of faded out. And that's when I actually just made the decision to teach my first acting class, and I started in the basement of my house. And you know, because you were there during that process, and I built a stage and doors that I needed. And I started with 2 students, and it went from 2 to 4.
This was what years was this?
This was 1997. So my first class, I think, was 2 people, then 4 people. I was thinking about this before, then 6, and then the group that you were in, and I think it doubled in size. And I had grown out of the basement in a year, and that's when I opened my studio.
Wow.
So, not the studio I have now, but yeah. No.
So it was in the base. So you were in the basement for how many years?
I was in the basement just 2 years, I think it was. Yeah, the neighbors were getting mad because, right after the adult class, I decided I was ready to teach kids. I didn't want to touch children until I had a plan, and I knew what I was doing. And I started off with tweens, not little ones. Mm-hmm. I thought, let me kind of get them while they're developing to that stage. And it worked. And then it grew from there, and I'm proud of a lot of they're adults now. It's, woohoo, like getting married,
wow,
graduating from college. It's very interesting. Some of them, on Broadway or have studied in college and made movies, and wow, yeah, it's pretty cool.
This
right,
guy.
Exactly.
So when you did your first classes, did you ever feel imposter syndrome, or did you know, I got this, I can do this?
Well, I didn't go into it just blindly. I was very organized, and I knew exactly how I wanted to teach and what I wanted to accomplish. And it's interesting because not that long ago, one of my students basically brought their notebook and showed me the notes that they had. And I went, wow, that's still the same for me. And one of my students had left their notes behind, and I recently looked at them and I said, yep, I did the right thing. And I prepared. Like I said, I didn't go into it blindly. And I'm watching them grow and seeing the growth in my studio, and people moving on and doing play after play or film after film, or maybe even ending up in college and doing things they thought that they'd never do. And the phone calls and the letters and saying, even running into people that maybe only took one workshop and said, that changed my life, or I wish I didn't give it up. I wish I came back. Everybody seems to come back. It's very interesting. The students I haven't seen, I had one in my studio recently that I hadn't seen in 15 years, and saying that it changed her life, and she wants to be part of it however she can.
Oh,
yeah,
great.
It's really cool. I think I stay in touch with almost everybody. There's a lot of people I haven't seen in years, but somehow we're all connected. So,
yes,
I did not go into it blindly. I know that was your question. I really researched it. And I think my teaching style has changed since then, because I had to learn how to teach faster. Raising a child and working for other people, they're like, oh, that's really great that you teach 3-hour acting classes, but we need you to teach one in 45 minutes. And I remember getting in my car crying, going, how am I going to do that? But I can. It's not the way I want to teach, but I can teach people differently now, quicker, faster. I know that sounds weird because it's, again, not the way I want to teach, because it is a long process.
Yes.
But if you're only going to come to me for 6 weeks, I want you to walk away with a lot of knowledge in your pocket.
So you were in the basement, and then you moved, became Star Map Acting?
Yeah, Star Map Acting Studio, which I lost, I hate to say, during my divorce. And that's when I had to teach at other places for other people. But I literally rebuilt my studio in my next house out of a garage, literally out of a garage. And I got kicked out of there because the fire department said it was going to collapse. I actually had shows in there, and I taught there for a long time, many years. It was great. It was awesome. And again, I put up a curtain, built walls, and put in a stage. Basically, it wasn't even a garage, it was a shed. It was literally a shed. And I did it for a very long time, and then I taught for other people, and just recently was able to reopen my studio now that my son's in college.
So was it a challenge, raising a son, doing all this?
Yes. but I never gave up.
Never gave up.
I never stopped. And the good news is that I was able to transform my acting into music and movement and teaching in schools and working in other theaters. So my age groups got younger, and I learned how to reinvent the wheel and make it work for every age group, and doing performing arts camps and musicals and you name it, I did it. And I also wrote 2 books in the process of the insanity. And I'm happy to say that my son's struggles were literally, I mean, he went through really some difficult times, and acting also helped him as well. And my training as an actor, I have to say, it's taught me survival skills, and it's got me through some of the worst times of my life. If I wasn't an actor and I didn't have that training, I don't think I'd be talking to you right now. Yeah, it keeps me in the moment. It always brings me back to all we have is this moment. Every little moment has a meaning all its own. Every little moment has a meaning all its own. And if you look past the moment, you won't survive the rest. And communication is so key. Just talking it out, acting it out, as I would say. Acting is not, I always just say, acting is not a way out. Acting is a way in. That's my quote.
I do remember that.
Because people will come to me and they'll say that they want to get away from themselves. They want to go into a different world. I said, then acting isn't for you, because acting is about digging deeper and being yourself, and bringing every part of yourself to every role that you play. And again, it's helped my son as well. Creativity is healing.
Yes. See, that's the theme of this podcast.
It's literally healing. It's life-saving.
So, what made you decide to write a book?
Wow. I was in my studio at Star Map at the time, and I got a phone call from a woman who said that she had moved to New York from California, and her daughter was having a really difficult time settling in school, and she was being bullied. And I think that was really the first time I heard the word bullied, and I didn't know what that meant per se, even though we all get made fun of at certain points at school or not accepted, but it was such an intense thing. And she said she was hoping that acting class would help her build confidence and help her to stand up for herself. And I thought, yeah, that's great. And I got to be honest, I expected, kind of an awkward little girl coming in, maybe overweight or wearing glasses. And in walks this little girl with blonde hair and these giant blue eyes. And she was like, absolutely, almost didn't seem real. She was just such a beautiful child, physically. And when we talked and she told me what was happening in her school, and she was shaking and she was scared. And I wanted to give her a monologue, and I could not find one that fit. And that night I wrote one for her. Wow. And it kind of, a lot of them after that just poured out of me. And the more she worked on it and did it, and the mom's like, this is the perfect monologue for her. Where did you get it? And I said, I wrote it. And I just started to write and write and write. And then one of my students, Christine Kalanick, also saw me doing this, and she started to write. Next thing you knew, we had, I don't know, about 80 or 100 monologues. And I thought I wanted to put a book together, and I asked her if she would do it with me. And that's how it all began. Never thinking that I would ever write a book, much less in the middle of my crazy divorce. But they just came pouring out. And it all started with that one little girl, because I couldn't find, I even met with another monologue writer on the beach, Mark Weston, and to see if he can come up with something for me. And he was like, no, I think what you have is much better. And I just wrote and wrote and wrote. And
so all this is stuff that you wrote, all these monologues in the book. And what's the name of the book?
Finally, Monologues That Work. And right now I'm working on finally mini monologues that work, because and hopefully eventually finally scenes that work. And it's from ages literally 4 through 18, and I'm working on an adult one as well. And hopefully I'll complete all of them. But yeah, writing is a huge part of acting, journaling, anything that you could write down. People think it's you have to research and writing your emotions. And again, the book I always recommend, The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron,
yes.
keeping morning pages.